1955 brought a strange mixture of tragedy and triumph to the age-old battle of man against the heartless crippler infantile paralysis. It was a time of high hopes, which were soon leavened by the brutal reality that polio was not yet over. Not yet over for the thousands who bore its mark, for the nearly 30,000 Americans whom polio struck last year, or for the unknown thousands who would be afflicted by it in time to come until science can finally put an end to this brutal disease. In 1955, a milestone was passed with the announcement that the SALK polio vaccine was 60 to 90% effective in preventing deadly paralytic polio, and millions of youngsters received one or more shots of the vaccine. But as summer came, in New England, a silent visitor crept in, polio. It first hit the Boston area. July, first week, 15 cases. Second week, 35, then 50. August, 370 more. Polio running wild, choking hospitals. Iron lungs were rushed in, sent by your National Foundation for Infantile Paralysis. A thick fear fell over the city. Summer ended, but schools stayed shut. Their halls mute evidence to the ever-present epidemic, against which the new weapon was too little and too late. To New Bedford, polio's tentacles had spread along the Massachusetts coast. New Bedford, from which once sailed sturdy, determined Yankee whalers to gain an elusive prey. But that same determination can be strained to the breaking point when children, little children who cannot strike back, are attacked and maimed by a hidden, more elusive enemy. An enemy making ghost places of their schools, emptying little tables and chairs. This was the stamp of polio in New Bedford. In Fall River and surrounding Bristol County, the toll of polio-stricken mounted. 70 cases in August, 80 more in September. The cost was great, in suffering, in funds for sufferers. $14,000 a day was contributed by your National Foundation. Many of the students who crowded these halls were now fighting desperate battles in iron lungs in Fall River's hospitals. In New Hampshire, starting in late summer, a polio epidemic gained momentum faster and fell greater numbers than ever before in the state's history. Cases mounted from 3 one month to 100 the next. Polio was not over here, not for these sick children. No vaccine could help them now, only hot packs or a cast. Infantile paralysis zigzagged up and down New England into Rhode Island, striking 4 times the number of the previous year. Some, the young, can snap back fast. But the adults, hit in ever-increasing numbers, return slowly, their stamina shattered, most relying on National Foundation aid for therapy. In Wisconsin, warning signs went up in midsummer as polio ran amok. In some areas, striking harder than in epidemic-ridden New England, striking hard at the very young, those who a few days before could run and jump on legs now paralyzed or throbbing with pain. From city to city it bounded, rolling up appalling statistics of new cases each week. 15, 40, 60, 100. Heartbreaking figures every 7 days, each figure representing a suffering human being. In Madison, more stricken. Many who once might have said, infantile paralysis? Me? Stop your kidding. That's a kid's disease. To Green Bay, statistics mounting, 140 new cases, 160, 350, and as always, regardless of the age of its victim, his race or creed or color. In Michigan, over 1,100 polio cases, many needing specially designed devices which your dimes provide. About a quarter of all polio cases today are adults. Think what it means when a mother is stricken. How many families can afford added hospital plus home expenses? Very few without your help through the March of Dimes. In Illinois, over 1,300 polio cases, 12 of them including the parents among the 16 members in this farm family. Prayerful letters poured in from all over the world. 7 children and the parents recovered rapidly, but a son, 17, still suffers in a hospital hundreds of miles away. And a second son, 16, with his 5-year-old sister, is in another hospital, not able to forget easily what polio is doing to them. Some 6,000 Americans were put in iron lungs last year. Nebraska suffered more than its share. Many can be weaned from them to other therapy with long, costly care developed at respirator centers. In Denver, this mother was encased in an iron lung, while in the children's hospital, her little daughter also fought polio, with the vital medical care necessary, but without the solace of her mother's face. And here, too, were bulky braces on legs meant for dancing. Who can explain them away to a teenager? It is people like this who so desperately want to walk, who ask you to help them recover. In Florida, more polio, more heartbreak. Polio over? Not for this youngster. Long hospitalization and expensive treatment await this child, and it is your dimes through the March of Dimes which will give the needed help. The gray walls of this New Orleans hospital hide much, but what may look hopeless to you is not with adequate care. This boy's future is not hopeless, but how many days or years before he'll chase a baseball again, or walk, or stand? You can help him do it. In Houston, iron lungs await another tiny Texan as hospital wards filled with polio-stricken. How cheap, how easily gotten is a breath of air, but not for everyone. For a child with polio, a minute's breathing can mean his life. A year's breathing costs up to $30,000. Isn't a life worth a dime or dollar? Young people harshly afflicted receive treatment and hope through funds given to the March of Dimes. Treatment such as this can make all the difference, so that a child will not live harnessed to a wheelchair as once she might have been, so that she'll keep on smiling, knowing that someone cares. Can they be deserted, these victims, just as they are progressing back to lives of usefulness? This year, the National Foundation is pledged to continue aid to 68,000 polio victims now depending on it. Aid to those who must remain in hospitals. Aid to those who can now come to clinics for lessons in therapy. Aid to those who can do very little for themselves and look to you for assistance, as if fate willed differently, you might look to somebody else. Infantile paralysis has no heart. It is faceless. Yet those it strikes have hearts and faces. Their hearts will beat because you contribute to the March of Dimes to keep their respirators going. Their eyes look out to you. Whose eyes will look out beseechingly this summer? A loved one's? Yours? Polio is not over. Polio will not be over until millions more are vaccinated. This year, the March of Dimes needs $47,600,000 to push this fight against infantile paralysis. The future holds high hope for this battle. We are moving toward the day when the seemingly endless line of iron lungs will end, when all can walk unafraid of this devastating disease, those who still march under the shadow of another polio epidemic. Join the 1956 March of Dimes. Send your dimes and dollars to your local March of Dimes headquarters. Remember those who suffer today and those who will suffer tomorrow until final and complete victory is accomplished.